Hi everybody, my name is Hannah, this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you the books and resources we're using to put together a small unit on whales. Now, I have a number of resources here. We're probably not going to get through all of them. Please check back at the end of this unit where you can find a review video of all of the materials that we used, what we liked, what we didn't like, what I recommend getting from the library versus what I recommend owning in your own personal home library. Okay, so all the projects that we're going to be doing for this unit are in one playlist. You can find that down in the description box below. This will be part of our greater oceanography unit, so you can find all of those videos already posted if you are interested in seeing what we did for that unit. Okay, so this is a small unit just on whales and manatees. We're going to have a couple of projects, and I do have a couple of books that I'm going to be assigning to my 13-year-old son to read while we're doing this unit. It's not supposed to last more than a week, but I do have more resources than what we can cover in a week. So I want to share with you how I picked the resources and how we're going to go about doing this unit, which is going to look really different from our other units. Okay, so about a third of the books here are general books that are going to cover a lot of topics. And so I'm only going to be using the sections that relate to this particular subject area. The first book I want to show you is a new book for us. It's called Curious Kids Nature Guide Exploring the Amazing Outdoors of the Pacific Northwest. It's a really beautiful book with gorgeous illustrations and quite a bit of content, in my opinion, compared to some of the other books that I'm going to show you that cover a lot of different topic areas. And so there are a few pages that relate to what we're going to be studying, not too many, which is perfect for us because we don't want to overload too much information. And so this is all that we're going to be using from this book, just a couple of pages. Okay. I also have, actually, let me move a couple of these things over. I also have this book here. I really, really like this book. It's called Whales, the Gentle Giants. The illustrations are really beautiful, and it's basically just a story, but it's packed with information. And so I love picture books like this where it's just an enjoyable story that you happen to be learning something along the way versus some of the nonfiction picture books that I've got that I want to show you as well. So highly recommend this book. Really enjoy it. It is a little bit dated. I cannot remember if there was information in here that just really shows that it's dated, but anyway, still really like it. This, I believe, this is by Random House. Let me show you the Scholastic book on manatees. Again, a similar format, beautiful illustrations, and again, it's story driven. And so another great book that I really enjoyed that's not the typical nonfiction picture book. So both of these really like, and I do recommend them. Okay, let's look at some of the other picture books that I've got here. Eyes on Nature, Whales and Dolphins, and this is just going to provide the information content that we need for this unit. Some of the I want to call it drier information, but because it's not as lively, but still in a book like this where you're not having to absorb too much, this might be okay. Now, I have some issues with books like this that cover a lot of different topic areas, similar to, like, say, nature anatomy, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And that's that if you need more content for your unit, this is not going to provide enough for you, in my opinion. Sometimes if you are going to completely create your own unit where you need to write the content, then you're going to need a book that has a little bit more information on the different topic areas that you're covering. But for just kind of like a brief overview or just get little tidbits of info, I think this will work just fine. Manatee Winter, this is another picture book, story-driven picture book, so I should have put that with the first two that I showed you. Really beautiful illustrations, oh, just gorgeous, and content to match in a story format, so really love books that are like this. Do whales have belly buttons? Questions and answers about whales and dolphins. I'm not actually a fan of question and answer books in general. This one was interesting, and we did briefly use it, I believe, with our last unit, but I can't remember at this time. This book we picked up from the library bookstore for, I don't know, 25 cents or something. And so whenever I am shopping the library bookstores, I'll definitely pull any kind of history or science book that is nonfiction, that's picture book, anything that we can incorporate into our units. I definitely pick them up, and because they're so inexpensive, if they don't work out, it's not a big deal. I can just donate them back to the library or another homeschooling family. But overall, I really like having these books on hand. In general, I would say pick these up from the library, check them out, use them for your unit, and then return them, because that way you can always get current material. Some of the material that I have is quite dated. But because we go through our units in, well, I don't want to say in a fast way, but sometimes we're spontaneously doing a unit, and it's just so much easier to have these materials on hand. Sometimes it's difficult to source them from the different libraries if someone else has a hold on them, and then you may not be able to have them for the whole duration of your unit if the books need to be returned or whatnot. So basically, for a lot of those reasons, I just try to have these books on hand for our units. This is another Scholastic book. It's called Whales, and I really like this one. Another one that I picked up from the library bookstore for only $0.25. What a steal. I like this one because it also has these acetate pages in between, like these overlay pages in between. And are they acetate or acrylic? Anyway, they're like the overlay pages, and it's kind of, it's fun. That's what it is. It's fun to read a book like this. And again, like, great information, great delivery. And also something else about this book, and I have it also in bears, is that it's really good quality and it's really durable. And so that's something else, since we use our books often and we've had them for a long time. I do look for ones that are going to be durable, and I do prefer hardback over paperback. Actually, let me show you one more book before we get two more books before we get to the general topic books. This book is new for us. It's called Whales, an illustrated celebration, and it is just so gorgeous. You could do an entire unit just based on this book. It could be your art inspiration, your story. It could be your the nonfiction information. I can get that out. And so I think that I haven't read it yet, so I could be totally wrong on this, but I think that it just is packed with just enough for you to put together an entire unit. It's super, super gorgeous. And we're definitely going to be using this book for our inspiration, for how we're going to be doing our written and artistic work to represent this unit. So absolutely love, love, love this book. We got this book after our oceanography unit was over, but it was so beautiful. I just wanted to add it to that unit, and now we get the opportunity to use it. Okay, this book is called The Story of Whaling. It's a coloring book, and I know that, is it Dover? Yeah, they have a number of coloring books, and I'm not crazy about them. My kids don't generally care for coloring books, and so they're not going to really color it in, and if they do, it's not something that they're going to be really into. But what I do like about this one is that it has a historical element to it that I think will work really well with this unit. And then of course it has, the drawings, which I'm not super crazy about. But what's nice about a book like this, there's like a huge truck trying to make its way up the hill. Anyway, sorry about the noise, but what's nice about a book like this is that if you decided to do your own sketches or illustrations, this might be easier to copy because you can really just see clearly the outlines. Anyway, I haven't read this one either, but I think that this will be a nice addition, just a different look at whales and the human interaction with whales and what we've done to the environment in that way. Okay, let me move on to Ocean Life Dictionary. This is going to cover all different topic areas, and we're just going to be using the parts that are relevant. This may be redundant information. It doesn't seem super captivating compared to the other resources that I have, but again, I pulled everything that could relate to this mini unit on whales, and we will see what we actually get through. And at the review video, or in the review video, you'll be able to see what we actually used, what we liked, what we didn't like, and then if you are looking to add these resources into your unit, then at least you can get a better idea of what worked and what didn't work for us. Okay, actually, let me do this one. Nature Anatomy. This is a book that we have used for a number of our nature units. The illustrations are just gorgeous, and this book has been used for inspiration for our artwork for our units. What I found difficult about this book is that there wasn't quite enough content to really be the only book that we would use for a unit, and also sometimes the content didn't seem to connect. It's a lot of little tidbits of information that kids can really easily forget. One area that I really enjoyed that we used recently was for our bird unit, and some of the pages were really informative and some pages not so much, but oh, here we go. So we did use this for our bird unit for art inspiration. I loved this 2-page spread on bird calls. We learned a lot of stuff that I didn't find in other books. But then when we got to the part on nests, it just seemed like information overload that didn't seem to really connect as well. It just seemed kind of sporadic. So despite what I would call shortcomings on this book, I still think it's excellent. I'm still really glad that I have it in our homeschool, and knowing those shortcomings, I would still purchase it again. So this is definitely something that I would say keep on hand in your homeschool. So we're just going to be using this 2-page spread, couple pages basically. So not the whole book, just a little bit for that unit. Let me show you another book that we're only going to be using a little bit of. This is called Animalium. Again, this book has gorgeous illustrations, just like Nature Anatomy, but not enough content, in my opinion, to stand alone for a unit. And sometimes the content is unique and different, and we can get something that we didn't know before. And sometimes it's just kind of repetitive because we got it from our other resources. But I still really love it. I think it's a gorgeous book. Okay, so and I don't even know if you can find this at the library, but anyway, I just pulled the page that we would need for whales, and it's just one page, beautiful illustrations, not a lot of content. So again, one whole book just for 2 pages, but that sometimes happens with these general books. This is a new book for us. It's called The Big Book of the Blue. It's really beautiful. For me, it's a little bit chaotic, but still, I think I'm really going to like it. We've only just gotten it. We haven't been able to read through it, but we are going to just pull the pages that relate to whales. I know that I saw something in here. We might cover a little bit with dolphins as well. I do think I saw a page, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, well, anyway. We're likely to go through a few of these pages. Really beautiful, kind of different computer generated animation in a way, but I think at least, but anyway, new for us, so I definitely want to incorporate it. Okay, last book I want to show you is called Rivers and Oceans, and this book is wonderful. I really, really like it. Now, it gives just enough information, really, really good content. But what's really awesome about this book is that it comes with a number of experiments that are super easy to do. They're really educational, and you can usually do them with things that you can find around the house. So you don't need to go out and buy any special equipment. And I really, really, really love this book. There are actually several in this series, and we have used them in our homeschool for a number of years, and I just can't say enough good things about it. So really enjoyed this. Definitely going to try to do at least one experiment from this book that relates to this unit. Let me show you the game that we're going to use for this unit. This is the Professor Noggins Life in the Ocean trivia game. We love the Professor Noggins games. We use them for as many units as we can. There are so many different games that usually you can find one that relates to a unit, and even if you can't, I find these to be really good games to play outside of a unit, especially for ones that you've already done. That way you can kind of just keep the information alive and just test yourself to see how much you remember from a unit that you did. So it comes with these gorgeous illustrations at the front, which could be art inspiration for the unit as well, and it comes with questions on the back. There are easy questions and hard questions. You can roll a dice. They have the answers on the side. And the way that we typically play this is that we will use these games for our opening activities. That's just a way to kind of warm up and just kind of get into the learning spirit in a way. A game is a great transition activity. I find that my kids will never say no to a game. They might say no to other work, but when you kind of inspire them through a game, then I feel like I can take that momentum and continue it throughout the lesson. Now, there are a lot of cards, and when we have made the mistake of playing all the cards at once, it takes us anywhere from like 20 to 40 minutes, and by the time we're done with that, like, I don't want to do anything. So what we'll do is we'll typically just choose a number of cards, and sometimes the kids will choose the cards that they want to be asked questions from. Other times we'll just say we'll play this for 10 minutes. Other times we might just choose 3 cards each, and then we will just test each other, and then whoever gets it right gets to keep the card, and at the end we just tally it up. So the easy questions, we always start with the easy questions. And what we notice is that at the start of the unit, it can be really challenging. But as we go through the unit, remember the questions and answers, and we get information from our books and resources, we find that the easy questions become a lot easier because we've learned, and then we try to challenge ourselves with the harder questions by the end of the unit. Or if we've done all of the easy questions for one card and everyone just remembers that they've done that question and that answer, then we challenge ourselves with the hard questions. So definitely highly recommend this game. All of the Professor Noggins games, we love them. I want to just show you 2 resources that are geared towards my older student. Actually, let me show you this one first. Island of the Blue Dolphin would make a fantastic read aloud for this unit, any unit on oceanography, and I believe Native American Indians as well. And if I had more time for this unit, I would read this aloud to my 8-year-old daughter. Right now, because of this being we're attempting to make this a really short unit, I'm not going to be reading this book aloud to my daughter because we already have other read alouds that we are doing. But I do want to show it to you because the last time we did our ocean unit, my son did read this, and it could have been a read aloud, but he read it. I also pulled, he's now 13, and so I pulled what I think is a high school level book, Moby Dick. It's the complete and unabridged version. I prefer not to use the abridged versions of books. The language, the quality of the written work is so diluted that I would rather them read the unabridged version. And if the unabridged version is too challenging for them, then I would prefer that I read it aloud to them or they listen to the audio version of the book. But I would prefer not to do the unabridged versions whenever possible. And as a side note, I once compared an unabridged version of The Time Machine with the abridged version, and the differences were pretty startling as far as like the quality of the language, the vocabulary, etc. Anyway, this is a tremendously big book, small print. It's just super tiny. I don't know that he's going to do this, but we talked about it, and I think he might take on the challenge. We'll see. I'm not sure. This definitely will take longer than the duration of this unit, but I do want to have a nice, healthy stack of books for him to read this year. Just because he's such an avid reader, I would like him to have more higher quality books to read rather than the super easy books that he tends to pick up from the library. Super easy books as in like the vocabulary is not that rich, even though the character development is pretty awesome. But the books that, junior high, mysteries or fantasy, those kinds of books. I want to have more hardy books for him. Okay, let me show you how, and then I have this little thing. I'm just going to put it out. Okay, let me show you how we're actually going to do the written content for this unit. This is something that I've been doing recently, and I totally love it, and I think I'm going to be doing it for all of our science units. Over the course of this past year, we've made a number of our own Professor Noggins inspired trivia cards. So any of the units that not any, but some of the units that we've done, we have done our watercolors or other art medium on the front to do an illustration. And then on the back, we've done a number of questions, either trivia or true and false. And that way we can do our own, has multi-purposes. One is that this is the way that we're going to represent learning for this unit. We're going to do our art, we're going to do our questions, and it really requires us to take the information that we've learned in our books and come up with questions, which is actually pretty challenging. So I encourage you to try this. Even if you're not going to make these cards, I encourage you to try coming up with your own questions and try having your children do that as well. It's not, it requires a different way to look at the information. So I know for us, we typically do narrations for the written work for our lessons. And that's like taking the information, then just kind of in your own words, summarizing or regurgitating what you understood. This just requires a kind of a different capacity, right? So we've really enjoyed doing these. And what's super great about doing these is that then you can review the information throughout the year with other units. And what's wonderful about doing this with your own cards versus with a card deck that you buy is that you get to enjoy the work that you did over and over and over again. And if you haven't experienced this before, I encourage you to try, because it's really hard for me to articulate just how wonderful it is to be able to admire the work that you've already done and to test yourself with information that you knew so well when you made these cards that now you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I know the answer. And yet you did at the time. And so I just highly recommend that you do these. Okay, so some of them are actually not done, you can see here. And we did some for some nature study that we did last year. And you can see that though we did some artwork, we didn't actually get to any of the content on the back. And so while I won't be working on these this time around, we will be making new ones for this unit. Our goal is to make 4 cards since this is a smaller unit. In the past, we used our Fabriano watercolor paper. This is the 90-pound watercolor paper. You can see it's a lot thinner. Once it's laminated, it doesn't really matter. But I have upgraded to the 140-pound watercolor paper. I do really, really like this thickness. And then, of course, once it's laminated, it doesn't matter. It's going to be durable and protected anyway. But I am really, really liking this heavier quality paper. Now, if it's going to be something that's enclosed in a main lesson book, I think the 90-pound watercolor paper is just fine, especially if you're just going to be doing watercolors that are kind of dry, not the wet on wet watercoloring. Okay, so it comes in a pad like this. This is the cold press, so you have this really nice texture on it. 9 inches by 12 inches. I cut it in half and then I cut it in half again so that our cards are 4.5 inches by 6 inches. And then we use our distress inks. I love, love, love the distress inks. We also have our Winsor Newton paints that we recently picked up. I like the color range on those as well, but I'm just really, really loving the distress inks. Now, this is like something you're going to find in the scrapbooking or art department. It's not really, I don't think it's really intended as a watercolor. I think it's more intended as like an ink pad and for mixed media. But what I really like about it is that you can just squish it down onto a non-porous surface, and then you can use your paintbrush with a little water and you can use it as watercolor. But what's really cool is that it will dry permanent, so you don't have as much time to work with it as you would a typical watercolor, and it will stain the paper pretty quickly. So just experiment with it a little bit. But what I do like about it, or rather what I want to say about using the heavier weight paper, is that if you are using this heavier weight paper and you make a mistake with your distress inks, this paper is a little bit more capable of you going over the area multiple times to kind of lift the color. It's not going to tear and kind of just start to just look bad as much as the 90-pound watercolor paper. Either way, both will work really well if you are doing just this kind of watercoloring, not wet on wet, or if you're not intending to make a ton of mistakes needing to lift the color. So the 90-pound works just fine, but I'm just kind of really enjoying using the heavier weight, and that's one of the extra perks, is that it will hold up well to lifting the color. Okay, so that wraps it up. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find more information, more pictures, and links to some of the different materials that we're using. If you want to check out some of the other projects related to this unit, you can go ahead and tap on the screen right now. And don't forget that if you want to see how our homeschool is progressing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.